All right, guys. Good evening, everybody. It's another Wednesday night, and it's another meeting for the unofficial selection committee. Chris Beach here with you in Melbourne and Victoria, Australia. Would be joined by Mr. Lutzer this evening in Bangkok, Thailand, but he's had to pull out once again for an urgent event that he can't get himself out of at this point. So, with me this evening, I have brought back the host of In the Blue Corner on the Sunday edition, the Nostradamus of the Carlton Football Club, and who isn't afraid to swing from the hip when it comes to the important issues. Mr. Vince Loggisano, good evening, good sir.
Wow, Beachy, what an introduction. Thank you very much indeed. And it's nice to be with you and to all of our viewers out there. Thanks for having me.
No problem at
Nice
all,
to be
mate.
able to fill in for Joe.
Not a problem at all. We know we can always rely on you to fill in when we need you, and this is another example of that tonight.
No problem.
So, Vince, you obviously reviewed the game between Carlton and Adelaide last week, and I hear the review might have been a bit scathing. I mean, I was coming back from Adelaide at the time when, I would already arrived back from Adelaide at the time. But why don't you remind everybody what you thought of the game that took place on Saturday night?
Yeah, well, I can just imagine how the smoke must have been pouring out of your ears, or the steam must have been coming out of your ears driving back from Adelaide. I think you drove, didn't you?
No, I flew.
Oh, you flew, did you? Okay. Oh, I must be getting you mixed up with the Sebastiani boys from the Jumper Punch who drove over there.
And Michael Maloney. Yeah,
Michael Maloney,
drove.
that's right.
They drove.
Look, there's no guarantees when you decide to go on an interstate trip, and I've been on many myself in the past that have left me coming back thinking, what the hell did I do that for? But, yeah, look, I think pretty early on in the contest on Saturday night, it was looking very, very forlorn. In fact, there were some pretty early signs that we were going to have a bit of a struggle on our hands, and that unless we went up another gear or two, we were going to struggle. And that's exactly what happened. I think even from the very first goal that was scored, it was pretty evident that Adelaide had come to play and that we were a bit lacklustre and a bit off our game. Mark Pitnick came back for his first game after a couple of VFL games, and he looked all at sea on Saturday night. He looked like a man who, as we say in horse racing parlance, needed the run.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assessment there, Vince. I'll give you my thoughts in a moment. Of course, we will encourage everyone to comment throughout the show, and we'll do our best to bring everyone on. Good evening, John Redmond. I hope you're enjoying the
John.
weather up at Darwin. It's probably one of the best going around at the moment, especially mid-year. But yes, it's good to
talk about getting away from Melbourne's cold winter. Johnny's gone back almost as far north as you can. So good on you, Johnny. Well done. Hope you and your lovely wife Marlene are enjoying yourselves up there.
And he's also had a shout out to you as well, the president of the Carltonians.
Former president. Former. If you don't say former, they crack it with me. So exactly. Let's just make that nice and clear.
No, all good. So, my thoughts on the game. Well, Vince, I think you pretty much summed it up. You know, I flew over on the Friday night, get myself sorted, get myself set up, and go to the game on Saturday night. Go to a supporters function with the South Australian supporter group. Fantastic event, by the way.
I was going to ask you, how was that? I mean, that must have been at least, let's just say a good way to sort of build up to the main game, even though the main game didn't turn out to be too good for us. But it is a good way to get all the supporters together, united and galvanised, all anticipating a big one.
Yes, exactly. Good evening, Rash, and good evening, David.
G'day, Rash, and g'day, Kirky.
So, just on the supporters function, yes. So it was actually quite a good event. We went to the Cathedral Hotel, which is, if you don't know where that is, that's literally up the road from St. Peter's
I've
Cathedral.
hosted many of supporters function for South Australia there. Yep.
I'm sure you have. But for those that
didn't go
know,
this time, unfortunately.
Yeah, but for those that don't know, it's up the road from the St. Peter's Cathedral, and it's up the road from the ground as well. It's about a 5-minute walk, if that, to the ground.
If that, to the Adelaide Oval. It's a great spot, isn't it?
Very, very convenient spot. Brandon Brevalacqua. Now, there's a name I haven't seen in a little while. Good to see you.
I said that to you too, Brandon.
Good to see you back in here, buddy.
Yes. No doubt sitting back enjoying some of that Melbourne Coffee Roasting Company product that he sells and enjoys. I'll tell you what, I enjoy that too. Damn good coffee.
No, that's a good plug there, Vince. If everybody can get on that, that'd be
ka-ching.
That'd be great. Yeah, exactly. So back to the game. Yeah, look, I've only done the Adelaide Oval twice, and I actually enjoyed myself both times, despite the results.
Yes.
Look, the break on the supporters function, we had about, it was limited to 120 people because of the COVID problems in South Australia. Nonetheless, they had Barnaby French rock up. They had
great guy, Barnaby, really good guy.
They had Bryce Gibbs show up, who's obviously living in Adelaide at the moment, playing for the Panthers in the State League of the Sample.
Yep.
And they also had Brian Cook and Luke Sayers rock up to the supporter function as well.
And I must say, I if I could give our president I guess a rap on this occasion. He apparently did speak at the function because I've seen some photos of him with the microphone. So good to see that he spoke to the South Australians, even though he didn't do it in Perth.
No, he did. In fact, he was brought on to speak by Brian Cook. So he got him to take the microphone and explain what was going on behind the scenes. Of course, Cookie did that as well. He encouraged everyone to get to the new facility out at Princess Park or Icon Park, one of the opens, which is supposed to be happening either on the 8th or the 10th of August. So look out for that. Member numbers were given, a few other things as well. And then, by about 6 o'clock, we all thought, right up, that's enough. We're going to go to the ground. And then, unfortunately, for the next 2 hours, as you say, Vince, it was hard viewing.
Yeah, well, look, I think we're probably fortunate to be as close as we were for the first 2 quarters, because I think they still played better than we did in the first half. But we actually found ourselves with a 3-point lead at quarter time, probably because of their inaccuracy more than anything else. They kicked 2 goals 4. We kicked 3 goals 1. So we had a 3-point lead at quarter time. And I think after they scored that first goal, we scored, I think, the next 2 or 3. If my memory serves me correctly, we scored 3 in a row. That was the best patch we had in the entire game. Those 3 goals. To go from 1 goal down to 3 goals to 1 up in that first quarter, around about halfway through the first quarter. Because then after that, honestly, we didn't fire a shot. I don't think we had any other patches of play in the rest of the game where we scored more than 1 goal before they answered it. So we didn't get any consecutive goals after that point. And they eventually, took the lead off of us in the second quarter. They'd actually kicked 4 consecutive goals before we eventually scored a couple late in the second quarter. So again, we were only 4 points down, I think, at half time, but very fortunate to still be that close, I felt. And then I thought, well, we're only 10 minutes away from blowing this game wide open. You just felt like, well, all we've got to do is go up a notch, change gear a little bit here and get a few consecutive goals, because we are capable of doing that when we're on song. But it just never happened, Beachy. It just never happened. In fact, it was Adelaide who made it happen, especially in that last quarter where they scored, I think, 4 goals, 4 out of the first 5 goals of the game, or out of the next goals of the game.
Yeah, and it was
Ran away with it in the end by 29 points.
Yeah, and it was a very disappointing way just to, go over to Adelaide, who I thought was probably going to be the easier of the games that were coming up. Because if you look at our last 3 games, it's Brisbane, who we will touch on in a moment.
Yeah.
It's Melbourne, and then it's Collingwood. Now, we've spoken about Collingwood before, and that has probably been the biggest surprise of all. See them up in third, considering where they were last season after losing Buckley.
Well, you've got to say, look, they are playing Collingwood. That is, they are playing with a real purpose. They clearly have a strong belief in their ability to fight back from any situation and still win the game. What have they won now? 10 in a row? And
10 in a row. Yep.
A lot of those wins have been by very small margins. So some people say, but they won't do anything in the finals. They'll capitulate in the finals. I don't know about that. I mean, a winning habit is a good habit. And they're obviously doing a lot of good things to get over the line in those games. And, I'll be interested as much as anyone else to see how they go. But don't underestimate them. They're clearly got a strong belief in their game plan, their coach, and they're playing with a real purpose since last year. I mean, for Craig McRae to get them from second last on the ladder last year up to the top 4 is just a remarkable result so far. I wonder if they'll stay there.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, our finals chances may very well depend on that last game in round 23 against Collingwood. So, I'm just reading that comment there from Ross Fiore. Collingwood take the game on, whereas we don't. I agree with that. We've been playing too safe. That's another area that, say, a team like Fremantle has fallen into the trap of, starting to play that slower, more measured, safe football, kicking it down the line type football, and we've been doing that too, and it just doesn't pay off. You end up losing the game. You'd rather that the boys take the game on and at least give it a crack, whether they get beaten or not. At least they've had a real go.
And it's you mentioned these guys before, but the Sebastiani boys, they've been known to make a statement along the lines of take that kick inside, go on the 45, go take that kick on the inside, be aggressive, don't take the safe route, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be stuck in a 2-on-1 situation where there's going to be at least one fist to try and stop you from taking that mark.
Yep. Well, I wasn't impressed at all with how we played, and I thought we were outplayed, outcoached. When things are not working, the signs of good coaches are ones that can identify where the problems are and also where possibly the opportunities are to change the game. And I just didn't see any major moves. And I've seen that quite a bit in some of our recent losses. It's a bit of a worry because it's starting to get that smell of, if plan A doesn't work, well, then we haven't really got a plan B. Do you see any major moves being made during the game?
No, I didn't. And and this is coming from someone that was there. This is coming from someone that attended the game against the Adelaide Crows. And like I said, it was very tough viewing. Now, I could touch on the dropping of Jack Silvani, but I think that's another show altogether. I mean, he was the medical sub, which I guess isn't technically dropping him, but even so, you're talking about a player that's one of our best in our best 22 easily each week.
Yeah, and if we didn't get those injuries, well, he wouldn't have got onto the field, would he?
No, that's a good point, but even so.
Look, I thought Matthew Nicks coached well. I mean, he took our halfback flankers of Sard and Doherty out of the game by playing players on them that were accountable. And I felt that even though Sard, I think, got something like 25 or 26 possessions, most of them kicks, he was largely ineffective against Adelaide compared to the week before against GWS, where I felt he was the best man on the ground and most influential and impactful player on the ground. Doherty also was rendered largely ineffectual despite getting over 30 possessions, and he turned the ball over a hell of a lot. So we didn't get that drive from the halfback flank that we'd been accustomed to. So that was full marks to Adelaide for identifying that that's where we get a lot of our drive from. Our midfielders, look, don't get me wrong, I felt that Cripps was clearly our best player and that Walsh was our second best player. But even though they got 40 possessions each, again, I don't think that they really hurt the opposition with those 80 possessions in any major way, as the scoreboard shows. On the positive side, I think McGovern did relatively well. And you'd probably say Cottrell's last quarter was good, where he, didn't throw the towel in and started to do things that made an impact. He kicked a couple of goals. Brandon's got another comment. Do you guys think our midfield is one-paced? Cripps, Kennedy, Setterfield and Chera, slow. I don't know. We don't seem to have a lot of really speedy midfielders, do we? I mean, they do cover a lot of ground, Beachy, such as Cripps and Walsh and when Hewitt's playing and Kennedy and Chera. Maybe not so much Setterfield, but yeah, I see where he's coming from. He probably feels that we need a bit more leg speed. Adelaide certainly looked a lot quicker than we did.
They did.
And the ground ball gets we got smashed in that area. We just absolutely got smashed.
We were absolutely murdered in that department. And you're talking about, Sard and Doherty rendered obsolete.
Largely ineffectual, yeah.
Let's put it this way. Ben Keys, who some would say is probably their best player, he was one of those players that just made us very, very hard to move.
Ben Keys' game on Sard was brilliant, really. I mean,
yeah.
Probably his best game for Adelaide, to be honest. And the other one, Darcy Fogarty, you can't help but be impressed by him and how he just brushed past three Carlton players in that play there where he kicked the goal around the corner. That was seriously embarrassing for those players. Rashid Hussain, when we are hunted, we are easy to beat.
Yeah,
I think we have problems with players and coaching, and we need to work on it. Plan B and C. All right.
Well, that's fair.
Thanks for that.
Vince, I actually agree with that. To be honest, I might only be 30 years old, but I'm quite fortunate to still have this head of hair on my head.
That's good. I'm 53 and mine's largely leaving me. So there you go.
So I'm like I wasn't ripping my hair out on Saturday night, but look, it was stuff like that just made me think, what are we doing? Like we didn't even do anything like that to them all night. Now I'm going to quickly go back to a few comments here. Joe Lutz has just managed to arrive as well. So good evening, mate. We know you're in the background.
Hello,
Joe. Ross
hopefully he's got the opportunity to come on before the show finishes.
Yeah, he will. Ross and Angela Fiora, why do we continue to bomb the ball long inside our forward 50 instead of lowering the eyes and just hitting up either Mackay or Kerno?
Well, that's a very good question. That's a good point. And we did tend to do that. I think part of the reason for that is the pressure that the Adelaide midfield put on ours. And, if we had time and space, I'm pretty sure those players would lower the eyes. But they didn't do it, did they? And I think most of it was because of Adelaide's pressure. Our pressure gauges were way down. But at times we still turned the ball over without necessarily being under major pressure as well. There was a lot of turnovers and clangers and missed kicks and hand passes that missed the target and all sorts of things going on all night. It was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was consistent as well because we didn't need 2 or 3 Crows players just to swarm us. There were times where we were just doing it ourselves. Now, this comment I find interesting here, Peter Vlahos, good evening, mate. If they are under pressure, they resort to playing Teague ball. Now,
what does that mean? If they are under pressure, they resort to Teague ball. Now, that must be Peter, referring to how they played under David Teague.
David Teague, yeah. That's the only way I can.
But exactly
probably
what does he
break it down.
mean by Teague ball? I'd like to know.
Yeah. Well, Peter, we'll look for the next comment from you, mate, to see if you can clarify that for us. John Holden.
I would anticipate that he means kicking it high into the forward line without any real purpose to the kick. It's that kick and hope hospital job, you know.
Yeah.
Johnny Holden. Good evening to you, sir.
And then he comes in again with, I think Harry, Charlie, and Charlie need to be moving more. They both look like they're staying at home trying to out wrestle rather than using their leg speed. Yeah, that's a fair
I agree
point.
with that too. Yeah. And look, Charlie had a good first quarter. He kicked a couple of goals, a couple of cheapies out the back, that sort of thing. But geez, after he kicked those first couple of goals in the first quarter, he was largely unsighted for the rest of the game. And Harry, I don't know what's wrong with Harry. The last month, he's just gone right off the boil. So he's going to have to find some form, quick, smart, and he's really going to need to find it this Sunday against Brisbane. If otherwise, I just can't see us winning the game unless Harry starts finding form again. It can't just be left up to Charlie. I think Harry's going to have to find some form.
The midfield as well. Can't be left up to the midfield. Vales chimes in again. Kick in hope. That's fair. All right. Yep. Well, I think we've touched on this week's game just gone long enough. We do have another game to worry about. And as you just said, it's against the Brisbane Lions up at Gabba in Queensland.
Yep.
So those of you that are in Queensland, try and get along to that because we need to try and make sure that we can make more noise than those Lions fans and make it very hard for them to play on their home deck, considering what they dished up against the Tigers last week.
Well, I'll say this much, Beachy. We have a fantastic clan of Queensland-based supporters. The Carlton supporters group in Queensland is a fantastic group, and they put on a great function over there at the Australia National Hotel every year that we play Brisbane in Brisbane. And no doubt they'll have a great function there on Sunday afternoon just before the game starts.
Yes, exactly. And if they're on the Goldie, then I believe they go to the Emerald Lakes Golf Club. I might be wrong on that one, but
yes, that's quite correct. That's right across the road from the Metricon Stadium.
Beautiful. All right, so we'll go straight into it.
What was that comment there? I was just trying to read that last comment. Sorry, it was up on the screen from John.
When they're moving, but of late they're just playing out of the box.
Yeah, I think that he's talking about Harry and Charlie there. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So Vince, as I said, we've got a game to worry about this week. What are we anticipating, considering we've only had 3 injuries from the game against Adelaide?
Well, I guess part of the reason for this show existing is we've got to try and anticipate what the changes might be to the side that gets named tomorrow. No doubt what will happen is that we'll name a full squad of players that will then need to be reduced down to the 22 plus a medical sub. The 22 at least anyway on Friday night. And I think the medical sub then gets named. Is it on the day or is it the day before?
Yeah, it gets named on the day.
On the day.
On the day.
So we're going to need to know by Friday night who the 4 emergencies are, and obviously one of those emergencies will end up being the medical sub named on the day of the game on Sunday. So, look, I think we're only going to see the 3 injuries named as outs. That is Matthew Kennedy with concussion, Corey Durden. Yep. And Corey Durden as well. Obviously, he went off. And Nick Newman. So I think you'll find that tomorrow when the sides are named, I think you'll find that the only outs will be those 3. I don't think they'll necessarily name any omissions, even though we lost to Adelaide. The trend this year has been that if we've had a loss, someone's ended up paying the price for it. So I do expect someone to lose their spot. But what I expect to see is an extended bench of 8 players? Is that what they normally do?
About 8. And sorry,
Yeah.
just before
And
you
so
go
out of
on,
those 8, you'll end up having 4 named in the side on the interchange, and the other 4 will be the emergencies, of which one will be the medical sub.
yep.
So the 4 players I think they'll bring in place of the 3 that have gone out will probably be along the line. Well, that's the other thing. Stocker got also concussed. In fact, before we go into the teams, Beachy, why don't we go through that injury list? I think it's probably best to get some facts here about who's available and who's not before we start talking about who we think will come in and who won't.
Yep, but before we do that, Ross and Angela Fiore, we are actually Sunday, not Saturday night. I think you're thinking of the Melbourne game after Brisbane. We are Sunday up at the Gabba at 3:20. Just to clarify that for you.
Sunday the 7th of August at 3:20 p.m. at the Gabba. Yep.
Correct. Yep. Right.
So, therefore, what is the injury list as far as you can see? So let's go through those injuries and have a look at who's available and who's not.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go. So you just mentioned Kennedy.
Well, Kennedy's definitely out, and from what it looks like here, he will be missing for at least 1, maybe 2 weeks. Is that right?
Yes.
He suffered a head knock against Adelaide, entered concussion protocols as a result, but also experienced a fractured jaw in the same collision. So at this stage, he's expected to return in round 23. So that tells me that they're pretty convinced he's going to be out not only this week, but also next week against Melbourne. So his best chance is to come back against Collingwood. So he's out. We've also got, I believe, George Hewitt is still not going to be available until the week after against Melbourne. He's a week-to-week assessment. Now, apparently he's got some back issues, George. That's not a good sign. They've said straight away he will not be available for this weekend. So unless they're telling fibs, he will not be in.
No, that's
Corey Durden was subbed out, injuring his shoulder. So he'll be reassessed next week. He's no guarantee to come back against Melbourne, but definitely out this week.
Yep.
Nick Newman experienced a deep cut to the front of his knee against Adelaide. He's required a procedure to close the wound that will take an extended period of time to heal. At this stage, he's expected to be unavailable for the rest of the home and away season. So, yet again, it's not just this coming week. It's probably for the next 2. So, no chances of Nick coming back anytime soon. And as I said, Liam Stocker experienced a concussion as a result of a tackle in the third quarter of the VFL game last week. And he also had to enter concussion protocols and will be unavailable this week. So, who are we going to bring in? Zach Williams is still not available. He's not expected to come back until round 23. You've got Ed Curnow. He's been out all year and still only just running at the moment. He's got a running program that he's undertaking and will continue to build up his loads over the coming weeks. Guys like Jordan Boyd will be out for, and probably the rest of the year, to be honest. Same with David Cunningham. Same with Oscar McDonald, Luke Parks, Sam Philp. They're all not going to be available for the rest of the year. So all you can do is bring in the guys in the VFL who have had a good game. And, they had a pretty poor loss against a very lowly team in Williamstown in the VFL last week. So you might find some players that are... What's that?
The game was out at Williamstown as well.
Yeah. So really, there's no players that are on the injury list that are going to be returning. So some of these players that played VFL are the ones that we're going to need to bring in, even though they've had a relatively poor game. I would have thought that Caleb Marchbank, if he was fit, would be a good chance to return. I would have thought, I'm trying to think of the other one now. Paddy Dow.
Yes.
Now that if George Hewitt's not available and now Matthew Kennedy's not available, just maybe Paddy Dow gets his opportunity again this week. What do you think?
No, I agree with both. I would also throw into the mix Lockie Fogarty on
Oh,
the
yes, Fogarty as
basis
well. Yes, he's been
on the
playing quite
basis
well.
on the basis of, and this is something that was pretty much alarming last Saturday night, of how
Yeah.
many missed tackles that we had on
Yes.
Saturday night. And
We had quite a lot, didn't we?
I make note of this because he laid 8 tackles against Williamstown, which is a fair effort considering how badly we were actually playing out at Willie.
Yeah.
So, he has to be in consideration.
The other ones that I think should be under consideration are Brodie Kemp.
Yes.
Number 17. And also, I did mention Marchbank, Caleb Marchbank.
Number 2.
Yeah. Paddy Dow said, Lockie Fogarty, you mentioned. Look, Jack Carroll, I don't know that he's available, and I don't think he's playing well enough yet to really warrant a senior call-up. Jack Martin played last week as well in the VFL and kicked 1 goal. Didn't exactly set the world on fire, but if he's fit, they may be just tempted to bring him back in. And, of course, Jack Nunes, you would expect to also be available for selection. He's been out of the side for the last couple of weeks. And the other one's Josh Honey, number 36. If we needed a tall, which I don't think we do at the moment with McGovern coming back, you've also got Sam Durden, who played that one and only game, I think, against Richmond where he got injured.
Yes.
He's also available. And the other one, the forgotten one, who got out... hang on, is he available this week? I'm talking about Will Hayes. Is he available? Is there still another week to go on his suspension?
No, he should be available now. I believe that's his 2-week suspension up.
Yeah, I think he didn't play against GWS or Adelaide, so that's the 2 weeks, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Because I think he did that. He got suspended for a hit against Geelong.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So therefore, GWS
very early in the game.
and Adelaide. Yeah. So he's already done his 2-week suspension. So he's also in line for a senior call-up. I can't see anyone else in the VFL that's eligible to play for us being in the mix. So you're talking Paddy Dow, Lockie Fogarty, Brodie Kemp, Jack Martin, Caleb Marchbank, Jack Nunes, Josh Honey, Sam Durden, and Will Hayes. So you've still got 9 players there to choose from, of which you've got to choose 4.
Yep.
So
you do.
Who do you bring in?
Well, for me, I
And by the way, I'm assuming that Jack Silvani will be left in the team.
Yes, I would expect so as well, because he, despite being the medical sub, he was another standout, even though he was on limited game time to try and rest his sore body after being in the ruck for 2 months. But that's neither here or there. Yes, I would agree that.
So out of those 9 players, do you agree with those are the 9 in the mix?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so let's just assume for a sec that that those 3 players that went out injured, Corey Durden,
Kennedy,
Matthew Kennedy, and Nick Newman are out. Which of those 3 that I mentioned earlier would you bring in?
Marchbank.
Sorry, which 4 would you bring back in? Sorry,
Marchbank.
You bring back Marchbank? Yep.
Paddy Dow, because I believe we need someone to replace Kennedy.
Yep.
And so that's 2. I would also then bring in.
Will Hayes is another option instead of Paddy Dow. You know that.
Yes, I would consider that because he can play also on the wing and in the inside as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to put a line through Sam Durden because I don't think that we're going to need more tall players. I think we've got Wiedering. I think we've got Lewis Young and now Mitch McGovern all in that back line. So I'm going to put a line through Durden and say he's not going to be one of them.
That's fine. Yep, no problem with that.
And because of that also, I'm going to also put a line through Brodie Kemp because I think he also probably comes in if we needed a taller defender. I don't think we need another taller defender.
No, I've got no issues with that as well. So of that, you've just ruled out 2, so we're down to 7.
Yeah. So you're talking Dow, Fogarty, Marchbank, Martin, Nunes, Honey, and Hayes. Come on, Mr. Chairman of Selectors. Make a decision.
Yeah,
What does everyone else think? Hey, by the way, give us your thoughts out there if you're watching.
Actually, I tell you what, while I think, why don't I run through the comments? Because there's been a few of them coming in here, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Rash comes in with, here's what I think. The changes are, ins are Dow, Martin, Honey, and Hayes. I think these 4 are in the mix. John Holden, Hayes, Dow, Honey, Kemp, Silvani in for Newman, Durden, Kennedy, and Setterfield.
Okay, so he's prepared to drop Setterfield on his performance and bring in another player. So that's John saying not only the 3 injured players, but drop Setterfield as well. So he's bringing in an additional player. So it's okay. That's good.
Yep.
I can't disagree with that.
Ross and Angela Fiore, Marchbank, Kemp, and Honey, and Jay Sauce in.
Okay.
Joe says, I don't think, and I'm not going to get a chance to come on, but I think we'll win just. Then there was a bit of banter. Go the Roosters. Roosters going nowhere. Be careful. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
they're obviously looking at each other's comments on Facebook by the looks of things.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Rush then says, Fogs, no, please. He will get delisted year end. David Fitzpatrick.
So Rash doesn't like Fogarty. Okay. He's been playing quite well in the VFL.
Yes, he has.
But then again, so was Paddy Dow, and he's hardly had an opportunity either. Exactly. Honey and Hayes for Dave Kirkpatrick.
Yep. David Buck thinks Honey. Rash agrees with him, thinks Honey and Hayes.
I thought, now just on that, Beachy, did you think Honey was a bit stiff to miss out last week? Because I felt that playing Durden, Owies, and Motlop all in the same team was just three very similar players, and I just thought it was almost too many of the same type. I would have put Honey in there instead of one of those 3, just to mix it up a bit. Honey can play a bit taller. He's not so much of a small forward as he is a medium forward.
And it's his forward pressure as well. He can push forward and keep that ball moving.
I'll be frank with you. I think Durden was very, very lucky to hold his spot in the team last week. Now he's going to be out because of injury, but I probably, this time last week would have played Honey and left out Durden. But that was my feelings.
That's
what about Jack Martin, boys? Yeah, well, again, Jack Martin's one of these enigmas, isn't he? He's got the talent. We all know he's talented. He just doesn't seem to look like a player that's all that committed to going at 120 minutes, and he goes missing for big portions of the game. That's why he's so frustrating. We're paying him a fortune. But, don't be surprised if Michael Voss brings back what I would regard as the class players of the list. And that is Jack Martin and Caleb Marchbank, who I regard as a class above any of those other players who are in contention for a spot. So don't be surprised if he resorts to playing some class. And, Jack Martin, whether you love him or hate him, at the end of the day, you've got to acknowledge that he can play some classy football when he puts his mind to it. So I'm anticipating Martin in, Marchbank in, leave Silvani in from last week's medical sub, and I'd probably bring in Honey. So they're my changes. Bring in Silvani, Martin, Marchbank, and Honey, and leave out those 3 injured players. Now, even though Setterfield, I haven't dropped him yet, I'd put him as part of those 8 interchange players, and then maybe, just maybe, he ends up missing out as one of the emergencies.
Yep,
we put someone. Yep. See, Setterfield's another one of those guys you could actually end up putting in as the medical sub. One of the things about Jack Silvani last week being the medical sub, even though it upset a lot of people, is that he's almost the perfect medical sub. He can play anywhere. He can play forward. He can play back. He can play on the wing. He can play in the middle. He can play in the ruck. he's very, very versatile. So in a similar way, Setterfield can almost do the same thing. So don't be surprised if Setterfield ends up being the player that they drop and is part of the 4 emergencies list, and then ends up coming in as the medical sub.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all, because there's actually a fair bit in that actually.
Yeah.
Ross and Angela Fiore says Hayes is available. Now,
He
Vince,
is available.
We spoke about this off air. Plowman would be dropped this week.
Well, that's another one. I mean, Setterfield's one that's often talked about as potentially. Look, the previous week against GWS, he had a great game. Because of that, I'm wondering whether Voss will give him that, I guess, that extra chance, purely because even though he didn't play a very good game against Adelaide, he did play well the week before. And he might forgive him for that performance, so long as he performs against Brisbane. So Don't be surprised if Setterfield keeps his spot. And yes, Plowman's the other one that's another enigma, another player that's the often gets the wrath of the Carlton supporters. He did make some absolute howlers last week, didn't he? You know, when he plays well, he plays okay. But geez, when he plays poorly, geez, doesn't he really put in some howlers? But he could end up being dropped in favour of Marchbank. I mean, they may have lost patience with him. I don't know. He certainly cost us a couple of goals on the weekend.
Yeah, there's no disagreeing here, Vince. David Buck says Honey, Marchbank, Dow, and Kemp in.
Okay, well, I've got 2 out of those 4, David, but the other 2 at the end there, I haven't brought in Dow and Kemp. I think Silvani and Jack Martin might be the ones that are the 4 inclusions. A part of the 4 inclusions.
Peter Vlahos in, Marchbank, Hayes, Honey, Joe Sauce, out, Newman, Kennedy, Durden, Setterfield. I think Vlahos is in the same boat as you here, Vince, by the look of it.
Pretty close. It's not quite exactly, but it's very similar.
Yep. Then Annette Beverlak comes in with Plowman.
Hello, Annette.
And Kemp in. So
okay.
That's another story.
In other words, what she would do is bring in Kemp rather than Marchbank. Okay. Well, Kemp's been in good form in the VFL, so that's a good chance that could happen. Yep. There's certainly some options there for the selection committee at Carlton tomorrow. As I said, I'm not expecting them to drop anyone at this stage because they don't have to. All they're going to have is a big extended team of 26. Then they'll end up deciding who are going to be the 4 emergencies by Friday night. And one of those emergencies will end up being the medical sub. So I do believe that the 4 inclusions will include Silvani as the medical sub from last week. He'll now become part of the 22. I thought he did pretty well last week, didn't you? Do you, Richie? When he came on, he had a bit of an impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had no issues with his game.
One thing.
Interesting comment there by Peter Vlahos. Did you see that?
Yes, and I'm
Plowman, he believes, will stay in as he has a history of keeping Charlie Cameron at bay. Well, Charlie Cameron is one of the real danger players for Brisbane. Let's face it. You asked the question a little while back now, what do you think is going to happen in this game? Well, I tell you what, if we don't keep their danger players at bay, we're not going to win this game. And if they turn it on, they've got three tall players up there that can be just as damaging as Harry and Charlie. And I'm talking about Joe Danaher, Daniel McStay, and the other one, Eric Hipwood. And Charlie Cameron is as lively as a small forward as there is in the game. He's probably like a young version of Eddie Betts, to be honest.
That's a good shout, that. He doesn't need much.
No.
He doesn't need much.
No. And I'll tell you what, when he gets on that motorbike and he starts to rev it up, he really turns it on for the crowd. But
yes, exactly.
I think Harry and Charlie will have their work cut out against guys like Harris Andrews and Marcus Adams. They're not going to be easy to beat. They are very, very accomplished defenders. So it's going to be a great contest. But What about the Brisbane midfield, Beachy? You've got McCluggage. You've got Lockie Neal, the Brownlow medal favourite.
You've got
Zorko, players like that. And, of course, the other small forward that we should mention is Zach Bailey. He's another one that can be very, very dangerous around goal. Reece Matheson chips in for goals. And don't forget the one player that Brisbane has that really sets himself every year for a game against Carlton.
Mitch Robinson.
Former Carlton player, Mitchy Robinson.
Yeah.
This probably will be the last time Mitch plays against Carlton. You know that? I reckon he's almost ready for retirement by the end of this year. I think he's 33, if I'm not mistaken. So don't be surprised if he hangs up the boots at the end of this year. And if he doesn't, maybe the team will move him on anyway because he has been dropped a couple of times this year.
Yeah. Speaking of former Carlton players, we saw Josh Kennedy hang up the boots. So
yes, big shout out to Josh. Look, he's been tremendous for West Coast. Look, I don't want to concentrate. I mean, this is a Carlton program, but he being a former Carlton player who had no part in wanting to leave, I can only say how delighted I am for him at the career that he's had. I had a little bit to do with him when he was at Carlton, so good on you, Josh. Well done, and you can hang your head up high. Or hold your head up high, I should say, not hang it. Hold your head up high.
Don't worry, Vince. I got the message. And
Kennedy, Coleman medalist and premiership player. Fantastic career. Nearly 300 games. I think he's going to end up on 295 by the end.
In fact, I think he's going to retire once he plays the home game against Adelaide. So whatever.
Is he? He's not going to play after that. Oh, right. Okay. Nah. So it might finish up at 293 or 4 or something.
Yep.
All right.
Likewise, they're taking over the show. Now, Brandon actually comes up with a very, very good question here, as per usual. The hard-hitting stuff here from Brandon. What area can we find an advantage against the Lions?
Very good question. Look, you'd hardly say the wings. I don't know. I think it all comes down to these contests and who ends up winning those battles. I mean, if our tall forwards can get the better of their tall defenders, well, then clearly our forward line's going to be dangerous with Harry and Charlie. They're probably going to need to kick a good handful of goals each. Like they did against West Coast, where they kicked 5 each. But this is not West Coast. This is the Brisbane Lions up at Brisbane, and it's not going to be easy. I'm not sure that there is an advantage. Again, if Cripps and Walsh get off the chain, they could do some damage. But, geez, without much help, Chera's been out of form. And now losing Hewitt and Kennedy, it's going to hurt in the midfield. So I'm not really sure. I can't see an area where we have got an advantage, quite frankly, Brandon. Do you? If you can identify one, or if anyone else out there thinks that there's one, please let us know. But, I just think we're going to have to match it with them in all of those key contests, whether it be our key forwards versus their key backs or our key backs versus their key forwards. We're going to have to win those one-on-one contests.
Yep. Now, Peter Vlahos has also said Daniel Rich will most likely come in as well.
Well, that's just going to make it even harder again because he's a real sweeper across that half-back line, isn't he? And he's a real distributor of the ball, and he's a beautiful, beautiful kick.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a very big, booming boot for a player of his caliber.
Yeah.
Now, I might be wrong on this, but I think I read somewhere that Zach Bailey may miss because of concussion protocol as well. Like I said, I might be wrong on this. Someone
That's
might be
news
able to correct
me. Okay. Well, that would be a big sigh of relief if he was to miss because he can be a very, very dangerous player up there.
Yeah, because
Jared Lyons is another player that's also underestimated up there.
Yeah,
as a small forward. All right, Beachy, let's get on with our predictions, shall we? Because I'll need to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes.
Of course, yes.
So let's get your prediction for the Brisbane versus Carlton game.
Absolutely. So, look, the Carlton supporter in me is quite worried about this game because there is an alarming stat that has worried me for a little while. Now, yes, we've played up at the Gabba in recent years. We haven't won up there since 2020. And that wasn't against the Brisbane Lions. Funnily enough, that was against the North Melbourne boys.
Yep.
If you're looking for a win, the last one that we had against the Brisbane Lions, I believe you've got to go back to 2013. So, we've
long time ago.
We've really had to wait 10 years for this.
You're talking about at the Gabba, of course.
Yes, I am. Yeah, up at the Gabba, because that's where we're playing them.
Yeah. And that was the last time we made finals, Beachy. So
even though
if we beat them at the Gabba this year, we will play finals. So there's the omen.
Yeah,
you beat Brisbane, you make finals. If you don't beat Brisbane, maybe that's a sign that we won't be making finals.
Yeah,
okay. Which in my view would be a massive fail, to be honest, because if we don't end up making the finals this year after being 8 wins and 2 losses after 10 games, that would basically mean that we've only won 4 out of our last 12, and that we've lost 8 of our last 12, obviously. To me, that's just massive fail all over it. To win 8 out of your first 10 and then miss out on finals, I don't even want to think about it. That's why I'm hoping that we're going to be good enough to win one of these last 3 games. Yeah, if I had to identify a game that I thought we could do it in, it was actually the Melbourne game, because I don't think their forward line is functioning all that well. So if we are going to make it, I reckon it'll probably be more like next week against Melbourne than this week against Brisbane at the Gabba. I just can't see how we're going to beat them.
No, that's fair. I mean, look, I'm going to back us in.
All right, come on. You give me your prediction. Go on.
I'm going to back us in, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I reckon this is probably going to be a 4-point win Carlton's way. But like I said, it isn't going to be easy. Brisbane was breathing fire after that loss against Richmond.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we are on from the first bounce, because if we're not, we're dead in the water, and the Lions will sniff that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sorry to say, but I just struggle to see where we're going to get an advantage over them. They do play so much better up on that home ground of theirs than anywhere else in the country. I think Brisbane will end up winning by 36 points.
Well, I tell you what, I've just read a comment here from Peter Vlahos. He thinks he's going to be 1 goal less than what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Brisbane by 30. And he wants to be
and
wrong.
Like you, Peter, I want to be wrong, but I need to see the team perform. And look, they seem to have lost their mojo in the last few weeks. So we have to find that again if we're going to win against one of these top 4 sides. And don't forget, this stretch where we're playing Brisbane, Melbourne, and Collingwood is our toughest stretch of games for the entire season. Until now, we've had a relatively kind draw. If we have played a top 8 side, we've hardly played. I don't think we've played 2 games in a row against top 8 teams. It's always been widely sparsed. But this time, I think we're going to play 3 in a row against those top 8 sides, and really top 4 sides, in my view.
Yes.
So it's going to be a massive test. I don't know that we're going to be able to pass the test this week.
And you know what? That's fair, because there's a few stats I could mention here, but look, seriously, we're going to be running out of time soon anyway. So,
and talking about running out of time, I've just about done that. I'm going to need to go. But look, it's been terrific. Thanks very much for having me tonight, and hopefully everyone else has enjoyed it. Brendan Beverluck, Lions by 60. He thinks we're going to get done by 10 goals. And he thinks we'll all be fuming at the end of the game. Well, who knows, Brendan? I hope you're wrong, but you never know. You might be right too.
Exactly.
Let's hope that we can make a better fist of this interstate game than we did last week. That's the other thing, Beachy. 2 interstate games in succession. Not an easy thing for a team to do.
No, exactly. But there is one bit of positive news out of this before we go. Each time we've lost, we've usually won the following week in this recent pack. So if we could just hold on to that, then we'll be okay. Anyway, guys, that is it. We're going to wrap it up this evening.
Beautiful.
Vince, I know you've got to go, so I'll let you go and do what you've got
That's
to
okay.
do. Thank
No
you
worries.
for jumping on at short notice once again.
Pleasure.
Great to have you back on with us again, and no doubt you'll be back on again for Sunday with Mr. Khatib.
Yes, we will.
Do not be afraid to swing from the hip again in the event that you will need to. Anyway, guys,
look forward to that on Sunday night at 8 o'clock with Steve.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, guys, that is it. It's good night from me, and
it's good night from him. Good night.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Go Blues.
Go Blues.